Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood at the edge of the great crystal platform, looking out at the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Galactic Council meeting hall was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. Strange alien creatures filled seats that floated in the air around him. Some looked like giant insects with too many eyes. Others were made of pure energy that shifted and glowed. A few looked almost human, but their skin was blue or silver. This was humanity's big day. After 50 years of begging, Earth had finally been invited to show their weapons to the Galactic Council. Kim Tae-ho had spent months getting ready for this moment. He wore his best uniform, the one with all his medals from the Earth Defense Force. Next to him stood Park So-jin, the smartest weapons expert on Earth. She carried a metal case that held examples of humanity's finest firearms. The council speaker was a tall creature called Veltar. He belonged to a race called the Karathi. His body looked like it was made of living flame, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like thunder. "Today," Veltar announced, "the humans will show us their primitive war tools. This should be entertaining." Kim Tae-ho felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face calm. He had expected this attitude. The aliens thought humans were backwards and stupid. They had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, while humans had only learned to leave Earth a few decades ago. Park So-jin opened her case and pulled out Earth's newest assault rifle. The weapon was sleek and black, made from the strongest materials human science could create. She held it up for all the aliens to see. "This is the K-47 plasma rifle," she began. "It fires high-energy rounds at speeds of—" A sound filled the hall that made Kim Tae-ho's blood boil. The aliens were laughing. Not just a few of them, but hundreds. The sound was terrible because each species laughed differently. The insect-like creatures made clicking noises. The energy beings pulsed brighter. The blue-skinned humanoids made a sound like singing, but mean and mocking. One of the floating jellyfish aliens spoke up. "Did she say plasma? That tiny thing makes plasma?" A robot-like being made of living metal shook its head. "No, look closer. It uses chemical explosions to push metal pieces through the air. It is not even plasma. It is just old." Park So-jin's face turned red, but she kept going. "The ammunition is specially designed tungsten core rounds that can pierce chemical explosions," laughed a creature that looked like a walking tree. "What next? Will they show us how to throw rocks?" Dr. Lee Min-ho, Earth's top military scientist, stepped forward. He was older than the others, with gray hair and kind eyes behind thick glasses. He had spent his whole life studying weapons and war. "If I may explain," he said in his calm voice, "human firearms are incredibly precise. We can hit targets from very long distances with perfect accuracy." The laughter got louder. Veltar raised one of his flaming hands and the hall became quiet. "Human," he said, looking down at Dr. Lee. "We appreciate your enthusiasm. But you must understand. Your weapons work by making small explosions to throw tiny pieces of metal. Our weapons reshape reality itself. We can tear holes in space. We can turn matter into energy with a thought. Some of us can make weapons from pure time." A serpent-like alien with scales that changed color spoke up. "My people learned to use energy weapons before your species discovered fire. What you call advanced we threw away as toys for children 10,000 years ago." Kim Tae-ho watched his team's faces fall. Park So-jin looked like she wanted to disappear. Dr. Lee just stared at his feet. They had worked so hard to get here, and now they were being treated like children showing adults their finger paintings. "Perhaps," said another alien, this one looking like a living storm cloud, "the humans could help with maintenance work, cleaning duty. Their primitive tools might be useful for simple tasks." More laughter filled the hall. The council speaker waved his hand again. "We will now vote on humanity's military classification." He paused, and Kim Tae-ho could see something that might have been amusement in the alien's burning eyes. "All in favor of classifying humans as primitive kinetic force users with support role duties only?" Hundreds of alien hands, claws, tentacles, and energy forms rose into the air. The vote was unanimous. "Motion passed," Veltar announced. "Humans are hereby granted the lowest military classification. You will be responsible for supply transport, base maintenance, and other non-combat duties. Your primitive weapons are not suitable for real warfare." Kim Tae-ho felt something break inside his chest. 50 years of hoping, of dreaming that Earth could stand equal with the great powers of the galaxy, and it had ended in mockery and shame. But then something else rose in him. Something harder and colder than disappointment. It was determination. He stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. "Council Speaker, I request permission to demonstrate human weapons capability." The laughter started again, but Veltar held up his hand. "You wish to demonstrate your chemical explosion devices?" "Yes, sir. I believe a practical test would be more informative than a simple presentation." The alien creatures looked at each other. Kim Tae-ho could see them whispering in languages that sounded like music, static and grinding metal. "Very well," Veltar said, and now Kim Tae-ho was sure the alien was amused. "We grant you permission to arrange a demonstration for entertainment purposes, of course. We are curious to see how primitive kinetic weapons perform against modern defensive systems." "Thank you, Council Speaker," Kim Tae-ho said, bowing slightly. As the council session ended and the aliens began to float away to their ships, many of them were still chuckling. Kim Tae-ho heard one of them say to another, "This should be hilarious. I wonder if their metal pellets will even make marks on our shields." Park So-jin walked up to Kim Tae-ho as they gathered their equipment. "Admiral," she said quietly, "what are we doing?" "They're right. Our weapons are primitive compared to theirs." Kim Tae-ho looked at her with eyes that had gone very hard. "So-jin, there's something these aliens don't understand about humans." "What's that, sir?" "We've been killing each other with primitive weapons for thousands of years. We've gotten very, very good at it." As they walked back to their small human ship, Kim Tae-ho was already making plans. The aliens wanted a demonstration? He would give them one they would never forget. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the oldest tricks work the best. 3 months had passed since the humiliation at the Galactic Council. Kim Tae-ho sat in his captain's chair aboard the human escort ship Soul's Pride, watching the stars through the viewport. His crew was small but skilled. They had been assigned to patrol the outer rim systems far from any real action. It was busy work, the kind of job you gave to people you didn't trust with anything important. Captain Bae Jin-woo was reviewing supply reports when the emergency alert started screaming through the ship. Red lights flashed everywhere, and the sound was so loud that everyone on the bridge jumped. "Captain," shouted Lieutenant Yoon Hana from the communications station. "We're getting a distress signal from Serenity Station." Bae Jin-woo stood up quickly. Serenity Station was huge, one of the most important trade centers in this part of the galaxy. Over 2 million beings lived and worked there. Ships from hundreds of different worlds came to buy and sell goods. If something was wrong at Serenity Station, it was very bad news. "Put it on screen," Bae ordered. The main display flickered, and then showed a Karathi officer with burn marks on his flaming skin. Behind him, Kim Tae-ho could see smoke and sparks flying. The station was under attack. "This is Station Commander Kethfar," the alien said, his voice full of panic. "Serenity Station is under attack by the Void Reapers. They have a full fleet. We need help immediately." The Void Reapers. Even Kim Tae-ho had heard of them. They were the worst pirates in known space, a collection of criminals and outcasts from dozens of different species. They had been terrorizing the Outer Rim for decades, stealing cargo ships and attacking colonies. But they had never been bold enough to attack something as big as Serenity Station. "How many ships?" Bae asked. 37 vessels, came the reply, including 3 dreadnoughts. "Our shields are failing. They're using some kind of new technology that our defenses can't handle." Kim Tae-ho looked at his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Oh Kyung-soo, how far are we from the station?" 6 hours at maximum speed, sir," Oh replied. He was young but smart, and he knew their ship better than anyone. "And the Galactic Defense Fleet?" "The nearest battle group is 4 hours away, sir. They should get there before us," Bae nodded. The Galactic Defense Fleet had the best ships and weapons in known space. If anyone could handle the Void Reapers, it would be them. Still, he ordered his ship to move towards Serenity Station at full speed. Maybe they could help with evacuations or something. 2 hours later, they came out of hyperspace at the edge of the Serenity system. What Kim Tae-ho saw there made his blood run cold. The battle was already raging. The Galactic Defense Fleet had arrived with 12 of their most advanced warships. Kim Tae-ho could see the flagship, a massive Karathi battlecruiser commanded by Admiral Zex Nari. Next to it flew a Zephyrian war vessel under Battlemaster Thane, its hull crackling with energy weapons. But something was wrong. Very wrong. The alien ships were firing everything they had at the Void Reaper fleet, but nothing was working. Plasma bolts that should have melted through hull armor were bouncing off like raindrops. Energy beams that could cut planets in half were being absorbed or reflected. Quantum disruption weapons that could tear holes in reality itself seemed to have no effect at all. "What's happening?" asked Dr. Choi Soo-bin, the ship's science officer. She was staring at her instruments with confusion. Their weapons should be destroying those pirate ships. Lieutenant Yoon Ha-na was listening to the battle communications. "The Reapers have some kind of adaptive shielding," she reported. "Every time the defense fleet hits them with a weapon, their shields learn how to stop it. After a few minutes, that weapon becomes useless." Kim Tae-ho watched in horror as a Reaper dreadnought flew straight through a barrage of plasma fire without taking any damage. The massive pirate ship then returned fire with stolen alien weapons, hitting a defense fleet cruiser. The military ship's shields flashed and failed, and the cruiser began spinning out of control. "How is this possible?" Oh Kyung-soo asked. "The defense fleet has the most advanced weapons in the galaxy." "That's exactly the problem," Dr. Choi said, her voice grim. "The Reapers have been stealing technology from every species they've attacked for decades. Their ships are like patchwork quilts made from hundreds of different defensive systems. Every time someone fires an energy weapon at them, their shields adapt." On the communications channel, Kim Tae-ho could hear Admiral Zexnari shouting orders. The Karathi was trying every weapon in his arsenal, but nothing worked for more than a few shots. The moment his plasma cannons found their target, the Reaper shields changed to block plasma. When he switched to particle beams, the shields adapted again. Battlemaster Thane was having the same problem. His energy lances could punch through almost anything in the galaxy, but against the Reapers, they might as well have been flashlights. "Sir," Yoon Ha-na said quietly, "Serenity Station's shields just failed." Through the viewport, Kim Tae-ho could see the massive space station. Its protective barriers flickered and died, leaving it defenseless. Thousands of small ships were trying to evacuate civilians, but there wasn't enough time. The Void Reapers were already moving in for the attack. "The defense fleet is falling back," Oh reported. "They've lost 3 ships and they can't hurt the enemy." Kim Tae-ho watched the most powerful military force in the galaxy retreat from a bunch of pirates. Ships that could destroy solar systems were running away, because their advanced weapons were too advanced. The Reapers had adapted to everything the civilized galaxy could throw at them. But as he watched the pirates closing in on the helpless station, Kim Tae-ho realized something. The Reapers had adaptive shields that could stop any energy weapon. Their defenses could learn to block plasma, lasers, particle beams, quantum disruptors, and every other exotic weapon the galaxy had developed over thousands of years. But Kim Tae-ho was willing to bet they had never had to adapt to a weapon that the galaxy considered obsolete. "Captain Bay," Kim Tae-ho said, his voice calm and steady. "Open a channel to the defense fleet." "Sir?" Bay looked confused. "What are you going to tell them?" "That sometimes the old ways work best." As Bay opened the communication channel, Kim Tae-ho looked at his weapons officer. "Lieutenant O, prepare all gun batteries. Load tungsten core armor-piercing rounds." O's eyes went wide. "Sir, are you sure?" "Those are just kinetic projectiles." "Exactly," Kim Tae-ho said with a small smile. "Just chunks of metal moving very fast. No energy signatures to adapt to. No exotic particles to counter. Just good old-fashioned physics." On the screen, Admiral Zexnari appeared. The Karathi looked desperate and angry. "Human vessel, you must maintain distance. These enemies are too powerful for your primitive weapons." "Admiral," Kim Tae-ho said politely, "request permission to provide assistance." The alien admiral's flaming form flickered with what might have been laughter. "Human, your chemical propulsion devices cannot affect this battle. Stay back and let real warriors handle this." But Kim Tae-ho was already moving his ship into position. The Soul's Pride wasn't much to look at compared to the massive alien warships, but it had something they didn't: weapons that had been designed by a species that spent most of its history trying to kill itself with maximum efficiency. "All batteries," Kim Tae-ho announced to his crew. "Target the lead Reaper dreadnought. Fire when ready." The bridge of the Soul's Pride was quiet except for the hum of charging weapon systems. Kim Tae-ho stood behind Lieutenant Oh Kyung-soo at the weapons station, watching the targeting display. The Void Reaper dreadnought filled the screen, a massive, ugly ship covered in stolen armor and weapons from a dozen different species. "Range?" Kim Tae-ho asked. 15,000 kilometers in closing, Oh replied. His hands were steady on the controls, but Kim Tae-ho could see sweat on his forehead. They were about to attack a ship 10 times their size with weapons the galaxy considered toys. Target their central hull section, just below the main weapon array, Kim Tae-ho ordered. Full spread, all railguns. The Soul's Pride had 6 magnetic railguns mounted along its sides. They weren't fancy like alien energy weapons. They were simple and brutal. Powerful magnets that accelerated chunks of metal to incredible speeds. The tungsten core rounds were each about the size of a soda can, but they weighed as much as a small car and moved at a significant fraction of light speed. Firing solution locked, O announced. On the communications channel, Admiral Zexnari was still shouting at them. "Human vessel, withdraw immediately. You are interfering with military operations." Kim Tae-ho ignored him. "Fire!" The railgun spoke with a sound like thunder. The entire ship shook as magnetic coils fired in sequence, launching 6 tungsten rounds across space faster than the eye could follow. There was no flash of energy, no beam of light, no exotic particles, just metal moving very, very fast. The rounds crossed the distance to the Reaper dreadnought in less than 2 seconds. What happened next changed everything. The Reaper ship's adaptive shields didn't even react. They were programmed to stop energy weapons, plasma bursts, particle beams, and quantum effects. But they had no idea how to handle chunks of solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The tungsten rounds passed through the shield matrix like it wasn't even there. The first round punched through the dreadnought's hull armor like paper. The second and third rounds followed, tearing holes through 3 different decks. The fourth round found something important deep inside the ship, and a massive explosion bloomed from the Reaper vessel's side. For the first time in 6 hours of battle, a Void Reaper ship was damaged. The communications channel fell completely silent. Every ship in the system, both Galactic Defense Fleet and Void Reapers, stopped firing and stared at the small human vessel that had just done the impossible. Did we hit them?" O asked, his voice full of disbelief. "Direct hits on all 6 rounds," reported Dr. Choi from the science station. "The dreadnought's lost main power and is venting atmosphere." Captain Bae Jin-woo turned to Kim Tae-ho with wide eyes. "Admiral, how did we get through their shields?" "Because," Kim Tae-ho said with grim satisfaction, "their shields were designed to stop the kinds of weapons that civilized species use. No one told them about the uncivilized kind." On the screen, the Reaper dreadnought was listing to one side, its lights flickering. The massive ship that had laughed off the combined firepower of the Galactic Defense Fleet was crippled by 6 chunks of metal fired from a ship 1/10 its size. Admiral Zexnari's voice came over the comm, filled with something that might have been awe. "Human vessel. How did you penetrate their defenses?" "Simple physics, Admiral," Kim Tae-ho replied. "Energy can be redirected, absorbed, or dissipated. But matter in motion tends to stay in motion." The Void Reapers recovered from their shock first. The remaining ships of their fleet turned toward the Soul's Pride, realizing that this small human vessel was somehow more dangerous than all the advanced alien warships combined. "Incoming fire," Yoon Hana shouted from communications. "Multiple ships targeting us." Kim Tae-ho watched the tactical display as plasma bolts and energy beams streaked toward his ship. But Captain Bae was ready. The Soul's Pride was small and fast, and Bae flew it like a fighter pilot. The ship twisted and rolled, dodging between the enemy fire. "Return fire," Kim Tae-ho ordered. "Target their weapons systems." O's hands flew over his controls. The railguns fired again, sending more tungsten rounds at the attacking Reaper ships. Each shot found its mark, punching through shields that could stop any energy weapon in the galaxy. A Reaper cruiser lost its main plasma cannon when a tungsten round cored through its weapon mount. Another pirate ship found its missile launchers destroyed by a perfectly placed kinetic strike. The Reaper's adaptive shields were useless against weapons that didn't use energy at all. "This is impossible," came a transmission from one of the Reaper ships. The voice sounded angry and confused. "How are primitive kinetic weapons penetrating our defenses?" Kim Tae-ho opened a channel to the entire Reaper fleet. "Because you adapted to fight advanced enemies," he said calmly. "You never learned to fight primitive ones." The battle began to turn. The Galactic Defense Fleet, seeing that the human ship was actually hurting the enemy, regrouped and renewed their attack. While their energy weapons still couldn't penetrate the adaptive shields, they could distract the Reapers and draw fire away from the Soul's Pride. But the real change came when 2 more human ships arrived in the system. "This is Commander," Nam Yujin of the destroyer Busan Thunder, came a transmission. We heard you were having some trouble with pirates. Behind the destroyer came the heavy cruiser Incheon's Hammer, commanded by Captain Jong Do-hyun. Both ships immediately began moving into attack formation with the Soul's Pride. About time, Kim Tae-ho muttered. Then louder, all human vessels, this is Admiral Kim Tae-ho. Target the remaining Reaper ships. Show them what happens when you bring adaptive shields to a kinetic fight. What followed was a lesson in human warfare. While the aliens had spent thousands of years developing more and more exotic weapons, humans had perfected the art of putting the right amount of force in exactly the right place. The three human ships worked together like parts of a single weapon, their railguns firing in coordinated volleys that overwhelmed Reaper defenses. The Busan Thunder specialized in rapid-fire kinetic rounds, sending streams of smaller projectiles that could disable multiple systems at once. The Incheon's Hammer carried the heavy guns, massive rail cannons that could punch through the thickest armor, and the Soul's Pride provided precision strikes, taking out critical systems with surgical accuracy. The Void Reapers had never faced anything like it. Their ships were designed to fight enemies who used energy weapons, plasma cannons, and particle beams. They had no defense against chunks of metal moving at incredible speeds. One by one, the Reaper ships began to fall. Not destroyed outright, but crippled and helpless. Human kinetic weapons didn't need to completely destroy enemy vessels. They just needed to break the right parts. Sir, O reported, the remaining Reaper ships are trying to retreat. Kim Tae-ho looked at the tactical display. 5 Reaper vessels were still functional, including one heavily damaged dreadnought. They were trying to flee the system, their adaptive shields useless against weapons they couldn't adapt to. Let them go, Kim Tae-ho ordered. But make sure they remember this day. The Soul's Pride fired one final shot. A single tungsten round traveled 8,000 kilometers and punched through the fleeing dreadnought's engine core. The massive ship went dark and began drifting helplessly through space. The Battle of Serenity Station was over. The most feared pirates in the galaxy had been defeated by 3 small human ships using weapons the civilized galaxy considered obsolete. On the communications channel, Admiral Zexnari's voice was quiet and respectful. Human vessels, the Galactic Defense Fleet thanks you for your assistance. Kim Tae-ho smiled. Just doing our job, Admiral. Sometimes the old ways work best. The aftermath of the first successful strike against the Void Reapers sent shockwaves through both fleets. Admiral Kim Tae-ho watched his tactical display as the 3 human ships moved into a tight formation. They were vastly outnumbered, but for the first time in the battle, the Galactic Defense Fleet had hope. Sir, Lieutenant Oh Kyung-soo reported, we're receiving targeting data from the other human ships. They want to coordinate our next attack. Kim Tae-ho nodded. Put me through to Commanders Nam and Jong. The communications screen split to show the faces of the other 2 human commanders. Commander Nam Yujin of the Busan Thunder was young but experienced, with the sharp eyes of someone who had spent years fighting pirates in the Outer Rim. Captain Jong Do-hyun of the Incheon's Hammer was older, a veteran of the Earth Defense Force with gray hair and steady hands. Gentlemen, Kim Tae-ho said, we have their attention now. Time to show them what coordinated human warfare looks like. Captain Jong's weathered face showed a grim smile. My heavy guns are ready, Admiral. Just tell us where you want the holes. Commander Nam leaned forward in his chair. The Thunder can provide rapid suppression fire. Keep their heads down while the Hammer does the real work. Kim Tae-ho studied the enemy formation. The Void Reapers were regrouping, but their movements showed confusion and fear. They had never faced an enemy that could ignore their adaptive defenses. Target priority, Kim Tae-ho announced. Communications arrays first, then engines, then weapon systems. We don't need to destroy them completely, just take away their ability to fight as a coordinated fleet. Lieutenant Commander Seo Jun-ho, who had joined Kim Tae-ho's tactical team from Earth Command, began plotting firing solutions. He was one of the best tactical minds in the human fleet, capable of calculating intercept courses and targeting solutions in his head. Admiral, Seo said, if we hit their command ship's communication array, the rest of their fleet will have trouble coordinating their defense. Good thinking. Oh, target the Reaper flagship. Single round, aimed at their primary communications dish. The railgun fired with its characteristic thunder. The tungsten round crossed space in seconds and struck the massive dish antenna on top of the Reaper command ship. The antenna exploded in a shower of metal fragments, leaving the flagship unable to communicate with the rest of its fleet. Immediately, the Reaper formation began to fall apart. Without central coordination, each ship began making its own decisions about how to fight the humans. Some tried to run, others attempted desperate attacks, and a few simply stayed where they were, unsure what to do. "Now we show them real human tactics," Kim Tae-ho said. "SEO, coordinate with the other ships. I want overlapping fields of fire on every Reaper vessel." What followed was a masterpiece of human military doctrine. While alien species had developed weapons of incredible power, humans had spent centuries learning how to use multiple weapon systems together for maximum effect. The Busan Thunder began laying down suppression fire, sending streams of smaller kinetic rounds at the Reaper ships. These rounds weren't meant to destroy, but to force the enemy vessels to maneuver and prevent them from aiming their own weapons effectively. The Incheon's hammer provided the heavy hitting power. Its massive rail cannons could punch through the thickest armor, targeting critical systems deep inside enemy ships. Captain Jong had spent 30 years learning to put heavy rounds exactly where they would do the most damage, and the Seoul's Pride acted as the precision instrument, taking careful shots that disabled specific systems. Kim Tae-ho and his crew had turned their ship into a surgical tool, capable of hitting targets no bigger than a car from thousands of kilometers away. Dr. Choi Soo-bin monitored the enemy ships from her science station. "Admiral, their adaptive shields are trying to respond to our attacks, but they can't figure out what to adapt to. Kinetic weapons don't have energy signatures for them to analyze." On the main screen, Kim Tae-ho could see the Reaper ships beginning to suffer serious damage. A cruiser lost its main engines when the hammer put a tungsten round through its reactor cooling system. A destroyer found its weapon systems destroyed by precise shots from the Seoul's Pride. Another ship was forced to retreat when the Thunder disabled its navigation array. "Sir," Yoon Ha-na called from communications, "we're getting a transmission from the Galactic Defense Fleet. Admiral Zexnari wants to coordinate a joint attack." Kim Tae-ho considered this. The alien ship still couldn't hurt the Reapers directly, but they could be useful in other ways. "Tell the Admiral that we'll handle the primary targets. Ask him to focus on rescue operations and preventing any Reapers from escaping." The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The human ships methodically worked their way through the Reaper fleet, disabling one vessel after another. Each shot was carefully planned and precisely executed. There was no wasted ammunition, no flashy displays of firepower, just efficient professional destruction. Lieutenant Hwang Min-jung, the Seoul's Pride's backup targeting officer, had taken over some of the precision work from O. She was young but had trained on human military simulators since she was a child. Her specialty was hitting moving targets at extreme range. "Admiral," she reported, "the last Reaper dreadnought is trying to escape. Range is increasing rapidly." Kim Tae-ho looked at the tactical display. The massive ship was indeed fleeing, using its superior speed to try to get away from the human vessels. In a few more minutes, it would be too far away for an effective shot. "Distance?" he asked. 8,000 kilometers and increasing," Hwang replied. "It's a difficult shot, sir. The target is accelerating and changing course," Kim Tae-ho thought for a moment. In the old days before humans had joined the galactic community, this would have been considered an impossible shot. But human weapons technology had advanced significantly, and their targeting systems were now incredibly sophisticated. "Take the shot," he ordered. Hwang's hands moved over her controls, calculating the complex trajectory needed to hit a moving target at such extreme range. She had to account for the target's acceleration, its course changes, and even the gravitational effects of nearby planets. "Firing," she announced. The railgun fired one last time. The tungsten round streaked across space, following a curved path that would intercept the fleeing dreadnought. Kim Tae-ho held his breath as he watched the tactical display. 8 seconds later, the round found its target. It struck the dreadnought's main engine core, causing a massive explosion that left the ship dead in space. The bridge erupted in cheers, but Kim Tae-ho remained calm. The battle was won, but there was still work to do. "Damage report on all enemy vessels," he ordered. Dr. Choi began reading from her instruments. 17 Reaper ships disabled or destroyed. The remaining vessels are either surrendering or too damaged to continue fighting. None of them are capable of threatening Serenity Station anymore. Kim Tae-ho nodded with satisfaction. "Signal the defense fleet. Tell them the immediate threat is over. On the communications screen, Admiral Zexnari appeared. The Karathi's flaming form seemed dimmer than usual, as if the alien was exhausted or in shock. "Human Admiral," Zexnari said slowly, "the Galactic Defense Fleet owes you a debt that cannot be repaid. How did you accomplish what our most advanced weapons could not?" Kim Tae-ho looked at the alien commander with respect but also with a new confidence. "Admiral, your weapons are more advanced than ours. But advancement isn't always the same as effectiveness. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." He gestured to the tactical display, which showed the disabled Reaper ships drifting helplessly through space. "Your energy weapons are incredible, but they gave the enemy something to adapt to. Our kinetic weapons are simple chunks of metal moving fast. There's nothing exotic for their shields to learn from." Admiral Zexnari was quiet for a long moment. "I see," he finally said. "We became so advanced that we forgot how to fight primitive enemies." "Not primitive," Kim Tae-ho corrected gently. "Different. Human weapons aren't more advanced, but they solve problems in ways your enemies weren't prepared for." As the human ships began moving toward Serenity Station to assist with rescue operations, Kim Tae-ho allowed himself a small smile. The galaxy had learned something important today about the difference between sophisticated and effective. But more importantly, humanity had proven that they belonged among the stars. 6 weeks after the Battle of Serenity Station, Admiral Kim Tae-ho found himself standing in the same crystal hall where humanity had been mocked and dismissed. But this time, everything was different. The Galactic Council chamber was completely silent as Kim Tae-ho walked to the center platform. No laughter, no whispered jokes, no condescending smiles. The alien beings in their floating seats watched him with something that looked very much like respect, mixed with fear. Council Speaker Veltar stood at his podium, his flaming form dimmer than usual. Next to him sat Admiral Zexnari and Battlemaster Thane, the commanders who had witnessed humanity's impossible victory over the Void Reapers. "Admiral Kim Tae-ho," Veltar began, his voice formal and careful. "The Galactic Council has reviewed the reports from the Serenity Station incident. We have asked you here to clarify certain aspects of human military capability." Kim Tae-ho nodded politely. Behind him stood his team, Dr. Park So-jin, Dr. Lee Min-ho, and Dr. Choi Soo-bin. But this time they weren't carrying weapons to demonstrate. The demonstration had already happened, and the entire galaxy had seen the results. "Of course, Council Speaker," Kim Tae-ho replied. "What would you like to know?" A blue-skinned alien from the scientific caste leaned forward. "Your weapons. They completely ignored Reaper adaptive defenses. How is this possible?" Dr. Park So-jin stepped forward. 3 months ago, she'd been interrupted and laughed at when she tried to explain human firearms. Now, every alien in the chamber hung on her words. "Our kinetic weapons don't use energy signatures that can be analyzed and countered," she explained. "They're simply solid projectiles accelerated to high velocities. No exotic particles, no quantum effects, no plasma or energy fields, just mass and momentum." The insect-like delegate clicked his mandibles nervously. "But surely such primitive weapons cannot be effective against modern defenses." "That's exactly why they are effective," Dr. Lee Min-ho said, stepping up beside Park So-jin. "You develop defenses against advanced weapons. Energy shields, quantum barriers, plasma deflectors. But none of those technologies can stop a chunk of metal moving at significant fractions of light speed." The silence in the chamber was deafening. Kim Tae-ho could see the aliens processing this information, trying to understand how their most advanced defensive systems had been rendered useless by what they considered obsolete technology. Council Speaker Veltar gestured to a holographic display that appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed footage from the Battle of Serenity Station, recorded by Defense Fleet ships. The aliens watched as human kinetic rounds passed through Reaper shields like they didn't exist. The Void Reapers had technology stolen from over 50 different species, Veltar said. Their adaptive shields could counter any known weapon system in the galaxy. But they were helpless against human firearms. Admiral Zexnari rose from his seat. The Karathi commander's flaming form flickered with what might have been embarrassment. "Human Admiral, I must ask forgiveness for my earlier words. I called your weapons primitive and useless. I was incorrect." Kim Tae-ho inclined his head respectfully. "No forgiveness needed, Admiral. Your assessment was logical based on your experience. Energy weapons are more advanced than kinetic weapons. But advancement and effectiveness are not always the same thing. A delegate who looked like a living crystal spoke up, her voice chiming like bells. But how did humans develop such effective kinetic weapons? Surely other species have considered this approach. Dr. Choi Subin answered this one. Most species moved beyond kinetic weapons very early in their development. They saw energy weapons as superior and abandoned the old technology. Humans never had that luxury. She gestured to Kim Tae-ho. We spent thousands of years fighting each other with kinetic weapons. We perfected the art of putting projectiles exactly where we wanted them, when we wanted them there. When we finally reached the stars, we simply scaled up our existing technology. While other species were learning to manipulate exotic matter and quantum fields, Kim Tae-ho added, humans were learning to make better bullets and more accurate guns. We got very, very good at it. The serpentine alien who had mocked human weapons months earlier coiled nervously in his floating seat. Are you saying that human military doctrine is based entirely on these kinetic weapons? Not entirely, Kim Tae-ho replied. But kinetic weapons remain the core of our military thinking. We believe in putting the right amount of force in exactly the right place. Sometimes that requires exotic weapons, but most of the time, simple solutions work best. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. What does this mean for galactic defense? Kim Tae-ho turned to see who had spoken. It was a representative from one of the newer species, a humanoid race that had only recently joined the galactic community. It means, Veltar said, his voice heavy with implications, that the Galactic Council must reconsider many of our assumptions about warfare and defense. The council speaker gestured again, and the holographic display changed to show tactical analyses of the Serenity Station battle. Charts and graphs filled the air, showing how human weapons had achieved results that no energy weapon could match. The defense fleet has conducted extensive testing since the battle, Admiral Zex Nari reported. We fired every weapon in our arsenal at disabled Reaper ships. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum disruptors, temporal weapons. The adaptive shield stopped them all. But a single human kinetic round penetrated every defense system we tested, Battlemaster Thane added. The implications are significant. Kim Tae-ho could see where this was leading. Council Speaker, what exactly are you asking? Veltar straightened, his flaming form growing brighter. Admiral Kim Tae-ho, the Galactic Council hereby offers humanity a new military classification. You are no longer considered primitive kinetic force users. We wish to reclassify humans as strategic kinetic warfare specialists. A murmur ran through the chamber. Kim Tae-ho knew enough about galactic politics to understand what this meant. The new classification would give humanity authority over military planning and defensive strategies throughout the galaxy. Furthermore, Veltar continued, we request that human military advisors be assigned to all major defense fleet operations. Your expertise with kinetic weapons has proven invaluable. Dr. Park So-jin leaned close to Kim Tae-ho and whispered, they want us to teach them how to fight with bullets again. Kim Tae-ho smiled slightly. Council Speaker, humanity accepts this new classification. We would be honored to share our knowledge with our galactic allies. But then his expression became more serious. However, I must point out something important. Human kinetic weapons are not just about the technology, they're about the mindset. For thousands of years, humans have studied the art of precision warfare. We don't just throw force at problems. We think carefully about where to apply that force for maximum effect. He gestured to his team. Dr. Park can teach you to build railguns and magnetic accelerators. Dr. Lee can show you how to design better projectiles. Dr. Choi can help you understand the physics involved. But the real secret of human warfare isn't in our weapons. It's in how we think about fighting. A delegate from a warrior species leaned forward eagerly. What do you mean? Every human weapon is designed with a specific purpose, Kim Tae-ho explained. We don't build bigger guns to solve bigger problems. We build better guns to solve problems more efficiently. Our weapons are tools, and like any tool, their effectiveness depends on how skillfully they're used. The chamber fell silent again as the aliens considered this. Kim Tae-ho could see them beginning to understand that human military success wasn't just about having different weapons. It was about having a completely different way of thinking about warfare. The Void Reapers made a mistake, Kim Tae-ho continued. They assumed that more advanced automatically meant more effective. They built defenses against the most sophisticated weapons they could imagine. But they never considered that someone might attack them with simple, well-designed solutions. Council Speaker Veltar nodded slowly. And this is the human way? Simple solutions applied with precision? Often, yes, Kim Tae-ho replied. Humans have a saying, the best solution is usually the simplest one that works. We don't make things complicated unless we have to. As the council session continued, Kim Tae-ho found himself fielding questions from alien military commanders who wanted to understand human tactical doctrine. They asked about training methods, weapon design philosophy, and strategic planning. But most of all, they wanted to know how humans had become so effective with such seemingly simple tools. Practice, Dr. Lee Min-ho said when asked about human accuracy. Humans have been practicing precision shooting for thousands of years. Every human soldier spends months learning to hit targets at long range. It's not just about the weapon, it's about the person using it. And patience, added Dr. Park So-jin. Human tactics emphasize waiting for the right moment to strike. We don't rush into battle with overwhelming force. We find the enemy's weakness and hit it with exactly the right amount of power. As the session drew to a close, Council Speaker Veltar made one final announcement. By unanimous vote, the Galactic Council authorizes the establishment of the Strategic Kinetic Warfare Academy.